Yesterday was International Day of Democracy. And I would like to take this opportunity to remind all of us through my questions to you what democracy means to each one of us. Abraham Lincoln said, democracy is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Something I think we should all remember. My first question is, why is democracy important? And this question goes to Vincent.
Why democracy is important? And how do we define democracy? And I can tell you that at least 50% of those present here will agree with me. I happen to be married. I share a house and a bed and my meals with my beloved wife, Karina. And yes, we both have equal rights. We both can voice our opinions and say, we should do this or we should do that, and then take a informed decision. But ladies and gentlemen, reality is different. When I ask a question and put up a motion for a vote, this is usually turned down, because if I say, how about if we have rice today with a bit of chicken? My wife would say, yes, I couldn't agree more, but how about instead of rice having noodles and instead of chicken having beef? So really, the only way to live in our home democracy is for men to be obedient and say, yes, ma'am, I agree to that. Because I think women just think in a different way. And it is just, if they ask a question that do not want to have any opposition, they just want to look for agreement. At least this is what I've seen in my home and in many homes of my friends. So therefore, is democracy the right vehicle to run a family? I'm not so sure. I think it is possibly more like a hierarchy where you have a general and you know that once the captain tells you what to do, the boatsman, the soldier says, yes, sir.
Thank you, Vincent, for your opinion. I am sure some of us agree with you. My next question is, what makes democracy? Vicky.
Madam Table Topics Master, what makes democracy? Well, to listen to Vincent speak, I would have to agree. We are all equal, but some are more equal than others. And that is certainly true in governments where we all say we're equal. It's true at the United Nations. I do a lot of work with the United Nations and I study the work that they do. And while the United Nations is meant to be a body that brings people together, it often does not do that. They make suggestions that they believe are important. Harold, you have a yellow light on right now, if you could fix that. They mean to make suggestions. They have statutes, they have things that they say, and then countries have to ratify them. So everyone says that is a great idea, but they don't ratify all of those good ideas. My personal issue that I work on is child soldiers around the world. There are tens of thousands of child soldiers being used right now all over the world. And the UN's job is to try to end the use of child soldiers. Starting in the Geneva Conventions in the 1800s, through the Geneva Convention in the 1977, those rules are meant to be a basis for treating children as special and protected. And yet, in the democracy that I will call the UN, where we're to bring people together, it's not working really well. I am personally starting my own website called childsoldiersnomore.com to help bring these services together. Because I believe that when people speak about democracy and speak about treating everyone equal, it's going to do more than good words. It's going to take work, it's going to take effort, and that is how we bring democracy in places that does not exist in the case of child soldiers. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Vicki. I look forward to seeing your website and contributing to some of the things that you may post. What are the values of democracy? Harold.
I would love to answer that, but I'm the timer.
I'll time you, Hal.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Shabazz.
I got you, brother.
Okay. The values of democracy are so many. You have the input and you have the genius of a mass of people who come together to solve a problem. You don't have one particular person, or you have the elected leader of a group of people that express their desire to move ahead. Democracies are naturally inefficient, they're slow, but democracies tend to last longer because the will of the people is heard. And that is one central value in terms of helping people grow, in terms of their democracies. First of all, they help people get security, more money for themselves spread out, opportunities to grow, opportunities to advance themselves, opportunities to be entrepreneurs, and the government can look into helping them be secure in their homes. Of course, we pay taxes for police, taxes for nurses, healthcare centers. We even pay taxes for our army to protect us from international issues. And that is a democratic process, not a dictatorship. We elect our leaders. When our leaders act up, we can vote them out and vote in new leaders. And not a friend of the leader, not a family member of the leader. I mean, someone totally different. Your neighbor can be voted in if they can get enough votes. Your neighbor can also be your leader of your community based on the will of that community. Democracy takes the temperature of a group of people. Now, there are shortcomings to democracy, but overall, it is one of the best ways to govern. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Harold. Democracy certainly makes a society fair. My next question, what makes a democracy strong? April.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. What makes a democracy strong is the opportunity for people to express themselves. And we have the chance to do that all the time here at Toastmasters, to practice being even more convincing, more persuasive, to do the elevation that we are looking for in our democracy. Abraham Lincoln was quoted as we started this, Mary. I've been reading a book called The Brundage Chronicles that talks about the Civil War and how it progressed, and vignettes of individuals characterized: plantation owner, daughter, soldier, president. And I am shocked, astonished, if you will, by how similar things that led to the Civil War seem to be, and compare them and contrast them to right now. And it seems as though the Civil War is too much of a real possibility. Democracy, everybody needs to be heard. We don't need to be killing one another. We need to be listening to one another and then acting collaboratively for the best interests of all. Equal rights for all. Our beautiful country still doesn't have equal rights for women. We need to go further with democracy. We need to go further with elevating how we treat one another, how we intentionally vote, and intentionally work to better our government and our civilization. Thank you.
Thank you, April. What is the core value of democracy? What do you think is the core value of democracy? Muriel.
Okay, the core value of a democracy. Good question. I think the core value of a democracy might be respect for each person's opinion and the ability to allow the expression of those opinions. I think too often, and we see that today, a suppression of people's opinions, people's ability to engage in controversial or unacceptable ideas, the having dialogue about issues that have always been the elephant in the room, but have been suppressed. So I think that democracy dies in darkness, as I believe one of our newspapers says, when there's not this ability to allow people to express. We see on the landscape nationally how many books are being banned, books on LGBTQ, books on Black history, books on racial equality, social justice issues, because we don't want in our country to just have a single narrative for those who may be quote unquote in power. We want to be able to have freedom of expression and respect for that. I think that someone said that great conversations come from great disagreements. And so I believe that sometimes we need to allow for those conversations that many times are difficult, but necessary in order to move us forward. And as April said, in a place of equality, a place of being able to view each other from that sphere of perspective, of knowing that we all have a right to be able to express. So that's what I think the core value of a democracy is, the ability to express without suppression. Back to you, Madam Table Topics.
Thank you, Muriel. Yes, the value of freedom, respect of human rights is definitely important. What does democracy depend on? Scott Oliver.
Fellow Toastmasters. A republic, if we can keep it, madam, is what our good friend Benjamin Franklin said when he was asked, what do we really have here when they wrote the Constitution? The truth is, the republic and the democracy fall apart when the voices aren't heard by individuals. And even then, they excluded the voices of people who weren't white, who weren't male, and who weren't landowners. Democracy needs to be ever evolving, ever changing, and ever focused, just as Pat asked us to be in our evaluations, ever focused on what our true goal is, the allowance of freedom and liberty for all, not just for some. It becomes difficult because democracy is such a powerful concept. We grow, we get better, we get stronger. And when we do, we can do so much more. But unfortunately, we start doing things that deviate us from the goals of democracy and our republic itself. We start chasing oil or empire, business, wealth, rather than individual growth and health. So today, focus on our health as a country, as a democracy, and as a people, so we can continue to have our voices heard, all of our voices heard. Madam Table Topics Master.
Scott.
Thank you.
What a lovely
Scott.
evaluation. Our next evaluator is Miss Vicky Trabosh. The Dame Vicky Trabosh will evaluate our table topics.
Thank you so much, Mr. General Evaluator. Harold, could you put your hand back up so you stay in the upper left-hand corner of my screen, please? Thank you. Table topics evaluations are meant to not go through each different speaker, but to look for some themes. And there were a couple of things said that were prior to table topics that astonished me in their value for table topics. The first is, think about it for a moment. I think those were Vincent's words. Do you think about what you're going to say for a moment? As an example, I thought about it for a moment, but it didn't come out that clear for the group. But when we stop and pause for a moment, when our thoughts are organized, the listeners are more engaged. Now, I have proof of this. I won't tell you who, but only 3 of our, I think we had 7 speakers, got votes, any votes. And for me, it was because their structure was really clear. Again, tell them where you're going to go. Now, when an issue, Mary did a wonderful job giving us a topic that was not easy, but the key is to think about democracy from your own framework. Vincent started us off really well. I thought he was going to do a little chit chat about the United States and what we call democracy, but instead he immediately pivoted to his wife and his family. Excellent job. I think what happens in some of these speeches is we start somewhere and then we get our groove. We start to get our rhythm, and that's where we go. The speakers that did the best in table topics paused and actually had one idea they wanted to share with us. And that one idea resonated in their 1 to 2 minutes. If ever you think it's too short of an opportunity to make a difference, think about who you voted for. Think about why you voted for them. We're not doing favorites. Not everybody gets a trophy. But those that got the votes got them because for the listener, there was a clear message that made the listener say, that's right. Not, you're right, Vicky, I should care about child soldiers. When you get a yeah, you're right, for those of us who have been married for a few rings around the tree, that's similar to a yes, dear. And we all know what yes, dear means. Okay, you're right, but that's the way it's going to go. But a that's right means, that makes sense to me. The speakers that were most effective for the audience were those who elicited a that's right and ended up getting votes. Fellow Toastmasters, I'm not sure about my time, Harold. I feel like I've gone long, maybe I haven't. But fellow Toastmasters, when you put together these short speeches, it's how we answer questions. It's how people who are effective in the press do it. This is not an exercise that doesn't bring value across the board for you. So ensure that when you begin a table topic, you really make sure you know where you're going. For instance, I didn't until I was, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds into my speech. So I'll just use myself as an example. But in every opportunity you get to speak, take a moment, pause, and you will be astonished by what you accomplish. Mr. General Evaluator.